Oh, life, you cruel, cruel beast. Hi guys, and welcome to the great Guild Wars 2 countdown. There have been two blog posts that came out by ArenaNet today, one of which kind of invalidated something that I've been working on all day. So, I did that server video the other day that came out that was an hour and a half long, that was all the servers except the American ones that we saw in Beta Weekend Event 2. And I have been working today on the next one, but a blog post has just gone up that comes from ArenaNet explaining that they've actually cut most of those servers out. So a lot of it now is just completely redundant and it's not going to be going up. So we have a lot less servers now. This is probably a good move from the sounds of it. It turns out, I wasn't aware of this, but it turns out ArenaNet seemed to think that in Beta Weekend Event 2, they put out loads and loads and loads of servers, but that wasn't necessarily because they had the demand for that many servers. It was just because with all the new resources that they'd bought or whatever, or their new capabilities, they went all out and put out as many as they possibly could rather than just what was needed. And the result of that was that there were a lot of really low population servers, and in particular with the way World vs World works, it seems like that was creating some kind of negative environments. I know in particular the server I was on ended up getting dominated in World vs World for most of the time. I did actually bring this up on a daily before about people getting mismatched and stuff. Seems it's something that people are reasonably concerned about, because in this very same blog post where ArenaNet have described that many of the servers have been cut out and they now have a full list, there'll be a link in the description if you want to check it out. They have basically explained how they're going to be working for World vs World now too. They've updated their ranking systems and how they're actually going to be pitting certain worlds against one another. But the main problem, I guess, that a lot of people had noticed was that with World vs World supposed to be 2-week-long matches, you could then run the risk of going a whole fortnight where your server is being totally and utterly dominated by another server, and it's basically just a gameplay mode that you can't play. It's obsolete because it's just too mismatched. So ArenaNet have kind of recognized this, and they've said in this latest blog post that for when the game originally launches, at least for a short while, the World vs World matches will only last a day each, and then they'll use all the information they get from that to start matching people up better. And once they're pretty sure that all their matching's fine, then it will go up to the planned 2 weeks from then on, and then it will just like run smoothly like that from there on. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of a big thing. A lot of the servers have been cut now. Apparently these are the servers that, all the servers that they'll need. The technology has been improved, and apparently we have much higher population servers as well, which is kind of interesting actually, because obviously in the beta weekend events there weren't many explorable areas or much room to spread out within the betas, so you could have quite low population cap servers in the beta weekend event at least, because it would still feel quite dense because there wasn't the entire game there. But I guess at launch, where people can be spread so much further out, it could feel really empty and desolate with such a low population cap that they had in the beta weekend event. So there are now less servers, but they have a much higher capacity for players, and even that capacity ArenaNet can dynamically tweak and they can alter without bringing the game down. They can just do it and you won't even be kicked out. You'll just be playing the game and they'll raise and lower it as they see fit, which is kind of cool. I think that that's one thing really ArenaNet can be quite proud of, their server technology and stuff. It was way ahead of its time for other MMOs when Guild Wars 1 first came out. Even when Eye of the North came out years later, when loads of MMOs were coming out and all sorts of stuff had changed, Guild Wars still remained one of the only games that could do streaming updates and the servers wouldn't have to go down. You just have to restart your client and then there you go, you had the update. And obviously that's come through with Guild Wars 2 as well, and it's a really, really cool thing that you just don't see that often, and they've done this with the servers changing as well. They've really done a lot, I guess, to streamline the experience, so we're not going to be constantly getting kicked out whenever a problem occurs or something like that, which is cool. And obviously things have changed a bit recently. More and more MMOs are looking to be free to play now, and are going to have the same business model that ArenaNet have been using all this time. But particularly for Guild Wars 1, that was always quite cool, I felt like, because like, hey, we're not paying a subscription fee, and yet at the same time we have kind of a better, more streamlined experience playing this game. It was kind of for a while, it was like Guild Wars, because it didn't have a subscription fee, was like the go-to game when other people's main MMOs went offline because of server stuff, and you could always rely on Guild Wars to always be up. And they're still continuing on with that, I guess, with this new stuff that they've been working on for population caps and stuff for the servers. But anyway, yeah, there's a bit of news there. Another blog post that actually came out as well today, they put two out, very nice of them. Here's another one from Rhys Sosby, which honestly it's nothing new. They're just talking about the cinematics that the game opens with. I guess maybe they just wanted to remind people that this happened. And hey, this can be our feature for the day as well. They wanted to talk about the intro cinematics for the game. So these are the really nice, really arty, really cool looking cinematics that we see when we first create our character, and actually are tailored and altered and changed depending on the choices we've made in character creation, which is really fantastic. So they go into a bit more detail about how that's structured, how each of these videos will kind of start off with a bit of lore, a bit of information, a bit of backstory about the race in general, and then it will split off for whatever choices you've made in your character creation, and it will actually dynamically, I keep saying dynamically, but and I don't even like that buzzword that much, I've got to be honest, even though it's like floating around Guild Wars 2 constantly, but it will actually put your player character in among the concept art and stuff in the cutscene, which is really cool, and it will render it right there. So yeah, this is just a blog post, I guess, talking about that a bit. They only talk about, in particular though, the humans, the Char and the Norn, which we've seen a lot of obviously because they've been in the previous betas, and they only show the start of these cutscenes as well in videos. However, they do say right at the end of the blog post that the Sylvari and the Asura have obviously got their own introduction cinematics as well, and that there could be an upcoming blog detailing them. I suppose that will only be after the beta weekend event launches. It might be a nice treat if it comes out before it launches though, that'd be kind of cool. So yeah, 2 ArenaNet blog posts today came out. That's kind of the newsy-ish stuff, I suppose, that happened. Yeah, it's bumming me out. I'm not gonna lie, it kind of annoyed me that I did all that and now like most of the servers are gone. But yeah, I don't know what I'll do with those videos in the end now. I might do another one where I do another roundup with all of them, but then they might change again for launch, so I don't see what the point is in doing that. And also, I've already talked about a lot of it, and I want it all in one complete package, but now it's split up and across all over the shop, so it might be better to just kind of leave it from this point. But anyway, yeah, if you want to read the stuff for yourself, guys, there's a link down in the description. I feel like I'm forgetting a little bit of news somewhere. Oh, never mind, I suppose. We've got 3 questions today. The first one's from I'm Not Your Pillow. Nice name, by the way. Who says, hello, WP. Hello. I really enjoy your videos, although I'm not that versatile with lore, and I'm normally not a very big fan of it. Nevertheless, there is something bothering me considering events and lore, or more so the direct background story of an event. Of course, I could see for myself in the upcoming beta weekend, but I wanted to ask someone who's played the game already. So, up to now, I always thought that players would just go to an event popping out in the map, but you've shown with the videos of the mini dungeon, I think you're talking about the Font of Round there, by the way, that they have an extensive story behind them. Most of the time, I do just the tasks given to me during a game and click through the quest text, but sometimes an interesting looking story would make me continuing the quest chain and give me at least so much information that the player could guess that he or she is now engaged in the quest chain. With Guild Wars 2's new approach to the whole questing matter, the long quest texts are gone, but are there other possibilities to give the player a bit of information why he or she does this specific task for an NPC, like NPC background text? There is stuff associated here. I liked what you were talking about here because this is one of my concerns for the game, really, that there is stuff you can read. Admittedly, if an event has triggered, you can go over to a character in the in-game world and you can speak to him and get a little bit more information about the event. And likewise, when you go into an area that there's a renown event going on or a heart quest, you can go and speak to that NPC and get a little bit more information as well. But the thing is, ArenaNet really wanted to push away from walls of text. They basically said, oh, nobody enjoys wall of text. I actually disagree. I think some of us did enjoy walls of text. But they were like, oh, no, nobody likes walls of text. They're not engaging enough, and they're outdated and not great for MMOs. We're going to do a lot more voiced stuff. So what came out from them doing a lot more voice stuff was, I guess originally the idea was there would just be just as much depth and stuff to all the quests and events, basically, because events are just replacing quests, right? So the idea would be all of these events would have just as much depth and stuff to them for lore and all that, but it would just be voice. But then the problem obviously is you need a lot of resources to voice that much stuff. They've already got a lot of voice work going into the game, and I guess they didn't want to have huge walls of text and exposition and interesting little facts and stuff about the universe for every individual event and every individual heart quest. So what we've ended up having is just a few tiny little bits of filler dialogue. It feels like 90% of the time it's just filler dialogue. You never really need to speak to the NPCs, not as far as gameplay is concerned at the very least, because you can just read up in the top right all the things you need to do. If it's an event, it will describe in the description of the event how to complete the event, so you never have to speak to an NPC or have any context for what you're doing. And if it's a heart quest, it will tell you all the different things you can press F at or kill to complete it as well, and you never have to speak to that NPC either. And it's a bit of a shame shame with the heart ones in particular, because once you've completed a heart event, you actually miss out on dialogue. If you speak to an NPC before finishing that heart, they'll say stuff to you. They'll say, oh, I need help for this, and this is why, right? And it might not be very interesting dialogue at all, but then once it's finished, they'll say something else. They'll say, oh, thank you very much. In my experience so far of playing it, I haven't been playing it long, which worries me that I've already had this experience, is even me, who's quite into the universe and the story, I'm getting really put off and not interested in going and speaking to the NPCs because they never have anything interesting to say. The only times I get really interested are when particular things happen at skill challenges, usually have something kind of cool to talk about, like for example that one in the Temple of the Ages, or things that you can actually just find around the world that you can interact with. Like for example in Ascalon, you can go around a lot of areas and interact with a lot of rubble pretty much all over the place, and it will give you little snippets of information about the faux fire and about the searing and about humans that used to live there. Those are the really interesting things. The actual events themselves never really engage me. The only ones that really do interest me are the ones where they're quite funny, and it's only ever the voice that gets at me, and that's fine. I like that. If there's an event going on and it's quite funny and stupid stuff's happening, like that first one you see in Queensdale where the little kid lets the rabbits out and you gather them all up and you take them back and the dad like berates him for it. That's really cool, and those are little things, but I'm not getting the same feeling as the walls of text that actually, if you were into the universe and the story, could sometimes be quite interesting, and that I feel like the game's lacking, and I'm already not especially with renown events. I just don't speak to the NPCs anymore, and that's not even considering the mails that you get for completing the renown events, where they thank you for helping them out. How many of you guys actually read every single one that you got? I got bored of reading them after a while. They were all the same thing. It's so funny to me that on the one hand, ArenaNet said all this stuff. They were like, right, we're moving away from traditional MMO questing. Why are we doing this? Well, because nothing is ever actually impacted on the world, right? We want events. We want actual quests to have an impact. If a quest is telling you in a traditional MMO that a place is about to be attacked, then an event will mean that that place is actually attacked. Things actually mean something. You don't have static NPCs lying to you about things attacking somewhere when really they're just stood picking daisies on a field, right? And that was their philosophy with it. And now we have these messages that come at the end of every single renown event that do that exact same thing. Like, it will be the NPC saying to you, oh, thanks to you, we're a bit closer in the area to fighting back the stone elementals, or we're closer to beating the bandits, or we're closer to fighting this or this or this, or we're now doing better in our research, we're doing this. But that's not true. The same events will continue to cycle in that area forevermore. It's the exact same problem that traditional MMOs had, and they're also walls of text that have nothing interesting or impactful in them 99% of the time. I don't think I found anything particularly revelatory in any of those little messages that I've got, and after a while, I've got to be honest, I was just grabbing the money from them and deleting them. And it's so funny to me that ArenaNet did all this to move away from traditional questing, and now we've got this problem here again. So I mean, I hate to be a downer, but that's one of the things I've got my eye on. I am a little bit concerned or a bit upset that I got so quickly. I mean, I was only like early 20s, but so quickly on just one character realised there's no point in reading any of these mails. Just grab the money and go. They don't mean anything. They never mean anything. So it's a bit of a shame. There is still obviously a lot of lore and a lot of good backstory. You just need to be in the right places. You need to be in the personal story. You need to be in the dungeons. You need to be in those little awesome things that I mentioned are kind of littered around the world. Some characters do have some cool stuff to say, and a lot of the times the most interesting things you see is when you just stand next to some NPCs out in the world and they'll have a little voiced conversation with one another. There is always still this stuff here. I think it's just more obscure now than it ever was in Guild Wars 1, because it's not as simple as doing it in events or in heart quests, because those 90% of the time aren't as fun as the little quirky things that are kind of hidden around the world, which in some ways actually I can imagine why people would quite like that. If things are hidden around, then maybe that's a lot more fun to be able to find, and more rewarding when you do see cool stuff like that. So it might all work out just fine, but yeah, I did definitely have a bit of that feeling. I was like, oh, really? I'm skipping these mails? Should I care more about these? But it just all felt generic. I actually felt like if I was the writer writing all of those like little mails, I'd be getting bored of it. It felt like they were bored, and you could tell because they had nothing interesting to say. It was just always the same rehashed, thanks, you've kind of helped in the area, I really appreciate it, but nothing's really going to change. But I'll tell you it's changed, and I'll tell you we've made progress. You know, the worst thing is when they're like researching something in an area, and they say, oh, we're closer to actually researching this thing, we're closer to uncovering the secrets, and you want to know the secrets, you want to know what the hell they're trying to figure out, but you never will, because they can't like say, oh, we're now finished in this area, the Dermond Priory has done what they need to do, we're pissing off, because the Dermot Priory won't leave because they have events and stuff like that in the real world. So you never actually get that. You never seem to get much of a resolution, or not enough of the time. I mean, maybe it wouldn't feel so bad, but we, at the end of the day, have just been doing that renown event in the area, right? It would be kind of rewarding to know what the fruits of our labour have gone towards, but you just don't really figure it out. The other shame as well is that they originally said that there were going to be like in-game books and stuff that were going on, and they were there for a while in some of the earlier beta stuff. Some of the skill challenges, you would get to read a creature book, and you could see that like in the press beta, but they're not there anymore. I don't think any of those books were ever fully fleshed out, and it doesn't look like they are a feature in the game anymore. It looks like ArenaNet might have moved away from that. Again though, maybe it will be something they can rush out in 2 months or so, or even less than that now. Be surprised though. I mean, it's not going to be in the last beta, so will it be in launch? I doubt it. So we've lost out on the lore books too. Like I said, there is a lot in the game. There definitely is. It's just a lot more obscure and a lot more difficult to find. Anyway, I'm not going to stop being a bummer about that one topic. I'm sure many people will disagree. Moving on to the next question. It's from Cosmo Short, who said, in a recent Asura Spotlight video, one of the NPCs in the first 5 minutes mentioned a golem named Mr. Sparkles. This is apparently named after the golem from Mr. Sparkles' blog in Asura Week that shows they are keeping to released lore. What else do you think we should see from the released lore, such as caravans moving through the Shiver Peaks and getting attacked by Jotun? Any ideas? I love this Mr. Sparkles thing. I thank you so much to all of you that have told me about this. Really cool. Strangely, one of the videos I did that did really well was just me reading one of the blog posts, Mr. Sparkles, that a lot of people quite liked. It's basically the story of an Asura that's trying to get across the Shiver Peaks, and he's with the Sylvari assistant. They're going to be attacked by Jotun, and he basically builds this golem called Mr. Sparkles, and then he goes out and destroys them all. It's really cool, and this I love. I'm kind of coming to this to counterbalance what I was just saying in the previous question, because this is actually something I thought was really cool. I have seen a lot of references now to stuff we've seen in the blog post that's actually not too bad. I was a little bit worried before the game came out and we got into the betas and stuff that ArenaNet had written all this really cool stuff in the blog post and loads of interesting little facts and quirks about the races and the various things that are going on in Tyria. They'd written all this brilliant stuff in the blogs, but then at the same time I was a little bit worried that that wouldn't translate fully into the actual in-game world, and that we'd have lore that only exists because it's on the blog and not actually in-game, and that kind of was a prospect that I didn't like the idea of too much. But they have been really good with it, actually. A lot of the stuff you find on those blog posts is in-game, and we haven't even played relatively that much of the world so far. We haven't been able to go to many places, but you can see it sprinkled all out there. It does all come together in-game, and I do think that under some circumstances, we probably will find players that come into Guild Wars 2, have no idea about any of the lore established in the blogs, but then leave Guild Wars 2 with the same impressions and understanding of the races as someone that's just like read the dry facts on the blog posts and the stories that come from there, which is really great. So in that regard, I do feel like ArenaNet have been pretty good at telling their story and getting their universe across and stuff in-game, which is something they've always struggled with. Guild Wars 1 had a great story and a great setting, I've said it before, but they were bad at getting that setting across and telling it in a compelling way. And Guild Wars 2 maybe is doing a bit better at it, especially with little references like this to Mr. Sparkles that we'll learn about in-game. It's really, really cool. So just want to end up on a quick question for some of you more mechanically inclined guys, but you'll probably know the answer already. DJ1 Guitar 1 said, is there going to be any other SPVP game modes such as Capture the Flag after launch? What are your thoughts about Capture the Flag? I definitely think it was one of the more popular battlegrounds in WoW, but I'm not 100% sure how viable it would be with Guild Wars 2's new game mechanics compared to other MMOs. No, I really don't think there'll be any other game modes. There might be with expansions eventually. I think ArenaNet might have the balls to say, right, we'll add one more competitive game mode each expansion. They had big problems in Guild Wars 1 though, where they had way too many game types and it was almost impossible to battle. Everything about Guild Wars 1 was just terrible situation, the perfect storm for balance. And one of the biggest problems in Guild Wars 1 was that they had too many PvP game types and not all of them gelled together with skills and stuff. So they have been really careful about just going with Conquest as far as competitive stuff's concerned. They do have obviously more fun and quirky and interesting little PvP-ish things by the way of activities and the mini games that you'll find out in the PvE world, like Keg Brawl that we've seen here and all kinds of stuff. So, and Polymock as well. So there will be other alternatives, but on a competitive level and stuff like Capture the Flag, not at launch, and they've never ever said that they'll ever do anything else. Don't forget that these things are spiced up a little bit by the way of secondary objectives within the Conquest maps that we've already seen. Could they do a secondary capture the flag-ish objective in one of them? They've already done like a guild lordy one. I could imagine just getting a massive point bonus if you capture someone else's flags in the middle of a game of conquest. I could imagine them doing that. They'd obviously need to get the points right. There'd need to be just enough points for people to be really incentivized to go out and do that, but not so many points they now ignore the conquest aspect of the game type. But yeah, they've never said that they'll do it. Don't hold your breath, but you might see stuff like that crop up either in activities or in the secondary objectives, or maybe when an expansion comes out they might do like one more. It depends how Guild Wars 2 kicks off on a competitive level after the launch, which until they get observer mode I doubt we'll really see flourish too much anyway. But yeah. Anyway, there you go, guys. That's a great Guild Wars 2 countdown. I'm going to go cry in a corner about servers, and I'll see you tomorrow, one step closer to beta and launch. See you next time, everyone.